It's true too. When we get triggered, you know, I say this, and now I'm putting it together, but I used to always say, you never know how you'll behave until you get really squeezed, until you get squeezed really hard. And it's so true.
when the shadows come out.
Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about that because like I
Yeah.
said before this started, I've done a little bit of study on shadow work, but I don't know it, and that's why I definitely wanted you on. And I'm so glad that we're
Yeah.
talking about that. And I'm so glad you brought this story up because I never even thought about it until you said it. But it's true. This is situational, and this happens probably more than we realize.
So many, but no, here's the problem, Lisa. Nobody wants to
Exactly,
talk
because there's
about
so
it
much shame.
because we live in a culture of shaming
Yeah.
and victimhood. And instead of really like, and what happens is there are people who are monetizing
Oh, yeah, yeah,
victimhood,
yeah.
like this ostentatious
Mm-hmm.
self-pitying online, pointing fingers, blaming, lacking all nuance. One of the things this is why nobody's talking about is because we have this thing called splitting.
Hmm.
Splitting is a narcissistic defense strategy where it's just black or white. I am all good, they
Yeah.
are all bad. And it completely lacks nuance. And because of this lack of nuance, nobody really feels the courage to step out. Like right now, me stepping out and saying this, I know I am going to get so much hate because they're going to say, oh, you're victim blaming. That's
Not at
not what I'm
all. Not
doing.
at all.
I am not blaming victims. I am holding every single human being accountable to looking at their part of
Correct.
the dynamic that contributed as co-created a situation from, and it comes back from childhood, that made this experience even
Mm-hmm.
possible. The anxious uh the anxious dynamic, the avoidant dynamic, why I was the perfect person for a dynamic
Mm-hmm.
like that. That's the question. Why was I the perfect person for a dynamic like that? And without having the courage to just have the conversation, because we live in an environment of like everybody just blaming,
Yeah.
blaming,
Too
blaming,
much.
and shaming and cancel
Yeah.
culture. Nobody wants to talk about
Mm-hmm.
it. But the benefit of me going through the court system, excuse me, the benefit of me going through the court system is I took
Yeah.
accountability. I went, here it is. This wasn't what I planned when I first, started my career, but I am willing to have the conversation in a non-shaming environment for the purpose of
Yeah.
healing, because we must unshame the
Right.
process,
Right.
right? And so this is where shadow work comes in. The shadow is the parts of us, the vulnerable parts of all of us that grew up in environments where certain aspects of our personalities are like our angry parts, the parts of us that were curious about sexuality, the parts of us that are reactive, the
Mm-hmm.
parts of us that are jealous. These are the darker, or the sinful, the sinful parts of us, the envious parts of us, jealousy, the part, all of these parts of all of our psyches, because we have so many aspects to, we are a multiplicity of parts, have been deemed as inappropriate
Yes.
or
Yes.
unacceptable, right? And so what'll happen is we will take those vulnerable parts and we will stuff them in the
Mm-hmm.
corner. As Richard Schwartz says, we will exile
Mm-hmm.
them. And what happens is that energy doesn't leave
Right.
us. It is there. It's within us. So in your case, if you're the anxious attached, it means there was a part of you that didn't receive the care and the emotional attunement from a caregiver. So that anxious part of you gets kind of, that vulnerable part of you is kind of hidden in
Oh
your
yeah, it
psyche,
was.
and you don't know it's there until you get into a relationship. And in a
Ah,
relationship, those parts get
sure.
triggered. You don't know they're there until they get activated. It's a nervous system activation in a moment where you become aware consciously of an unconscious pain or as Eckhart Tolle calls pain body, that we're holding in, that we don't know is there until I'm in a
Yeah.
relationship dynamic and I go through something similar where, let's say, your husband needs space, and that activates that
Yep.
exiled, alone part of you, and you then become
Hmm.
rageful and cross boundaries, and you say, we're going to listen, and you get it critical and you
Yep.
get blaming. And then what happens is it activates his shadow of failure or shame, where his mother was scolding him. So now two people whose unconscious complexes, called the shadow, the parts of us that we've been kind of hiding or trying to work around or trying to compensate for, perfectly designed in a relationship to both of you to activate one another so that you can now face what you've been avoiding. And now becoming trigger proof is learning how to work with that shadow rather than try to fight against it. And this has been a lifesaver. And this is how you break the cycle. And this is
Hmm.
how you shift and rewire a new identity that's no longer trying to avoid parts of themselves, but is now working with that part and not trying to use the intimate relationship out there to try to avoid what's in
Holy
there. And
cow.
that's what shadow work is to me.
Holy cow. You totally describe my ex-husband and me, that to a
I have a
T.
hidden camera. I have a hidden camera in your home. I was watching the whole
Holy
thing.
cow! And I had a guest on, Bev Middleman. I hope I said her name right, her last name right. I'm sorry if I didn't, but she did on attachments, and it's just so interesting. And she said something, and I think this is true. It's like, if you know your attachment style, like, that is so powerful. Like, that will help.
It's a
Yeah, it's a
start,
start. It definitely is a start.
a
God,
good
I wish
start.
I
That's
knew
where I
that.
started the
I
healing.
wish I knew that. I mean, so much of my healing has been done over the last like 15 years because there wasn't this information out there, but it's just
Of
so
course.
powerful.